So I just finished Oathbringer, Brandon Sanderson, which is the third book in the Stormlight archive. Um, this one's really difficult for me. I really like Brandon Sanderson. He's, in a lot of ways, one of my favourite authors. And I think you need to acknowledge that he is not the greatest writer in terms of prose, and I don't even think that's a bad thing, right? Like you kind of need a balance with what you're reading to make it more enjoyable. So I like reading things with a bit more literary clout and weight, and that will kind of stay with me for a longer time. And that, if you want to sound pretentious, you can rattle off a list of these pretentious books that you've read. But I also really enjoy Brandon Sanderson. I think he's a real page turner. I think he's really interesting. I'm reading a lot of his books with my son at the moment, and my son absolutely loves it. And it's so good to kind of be able to share that with my boy. And I think Brandon Sanderson's amazing at what he does. This is not in any way a criticism about him. He's just different, and when you want those differences, that's great. So, in terms of the book, I'm now sort of in the future doing the editing on this video, and I can hear clearly that you can hear my kids in the background. So the only time I had the chance to film this was when my kids were going to bed, and I have a 3-year-old who is very fond of a tantrum at the moment. I didn't think you could pick it up on the microphone, but you can definitely pick it up on the microphone. And I don't have enough time in my day to be able to kind of re-record. My kids not screaming in the background. I just don't have that luxury at the moment. So I want to kind of keep getting videos out at least semi-regularly. I don't really have time to be re-recording or re-reviewing, so hopefully you can put up with it and just see it as an added bonus in the footage. One other point is it's the kind of 2 weeks of warm weather we get in England, which we're obviously not built for. So you can tell I'm looking quite warm at the moment. So apologies for that, but yeah, it's England. There's no point getting air conditioning for like the 1 or 2 weeks of summer that we actually have some heat. It's so difficult. So I guess the overall message is I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, and as much as many other reviewers who talk about it will say. But I think there's a few things working against it for that. So the first one is I read this sort of half on Audible and half by Kindle, maybe even more, slightly more on Audible. And I think it's too long to be an Audible book, really. I think it's like 55 hours or something, isn't it? Which is just too long, and it's difficult to kind of always be zoned in and focused on Audible for that long. And this isn't really a comment on the narrators. Michael Kramer is, I think, one of the best narrators going. Absolutely phenomenal. He's so good that I've even looked up books that I had no interest in reading otherwise, but that were read by Michael Kramer, just because I think he adds something to the text. There's another narrator on these as well who I don't think is as good, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think me listening to this on Audible for me wasn't the best, and I don't think it helped. And I enjoyed it more when I read it. I say physically, but on Kindle. So what I'll maybe just go on this one. Maybe just talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. So I liked the end. Obviously, I thought it was brilliant. Real page turner, exactly what Brandon Sanderson does with pretty much every book. Very, very enjoyable. I liked that the magic system opened up a lot in this one. You kind of got to see a lot more of the world. I thought that was very good. What I didn't like, I don't like Shallan as a character. I don't know why. I never really have. I think I don't want to spoil too much about what happens to her personality or her character on this, but I think Brandon Sanderson tries to do something with her that I don't think. It's either Brandon Sanderson isn't skilled enough as a writer to pull it off, or the audience he's trying to attract, and therefore, if he's trying to make this book more of a kind of exciting page turner with the prose is simple, and he's doing that deliberately, then I don't think what he's trying to do meshes with that literary style. It, to me, came off quite jarring. Now, I think I'm in the minority on that opinion, but I really struggled with her as a character and what she went through. I don't think her arc worked. I don't like it. I don't really like her as a character anyway. And a lot of the book is focused on her, and I really struggled with those sections, and also those bits narrated by the weaker narrator as well. So yeah, I really struggle with that. And the main thing, and I know what a lot of people will say when they hear someone saying this about the Stormlight Archive books, and but for me, they're just too long. Now I know that's kind of the point, right? And obviously, you want to kind of get settled, or what Brandon Sanderson's trying to achieve is for people to be able to get really settled and really invested in this world and learn like more about like the history and get a really deep understanding of the characters. For me, and this is obviously a subjective personal thing, but for me, that doesn't really work. It's just not. I'm not that interested in learning so much about the world and so much about the characters and having like really detailed understanding of the characters. I just don't need it. And I think that's probably reflective of just the position I'm in with my reading at the moment. I have a very long list of books that I'm trying to get through, and I'm trying to tick those off. So when you see a book that's like 1,200, 1,300 pages, which is almost like 5 times as long as some of the other books I've reviewed already, it's difficult to kind of I don't know, not be a bit put off by that and not be a bit frustrated by that. But I think this book could have been as impactful and as good in, I don't know, half as long. Like there just seemed to be so much fat, and you kind of have, for those who've read, say, Mistborn, like there's a setup and there's like a really really exciting ending, and your kind of proportion of how much setup there is to the really exciting ending is pretty high, right? You have like maybe 10-15% at the end is very exciting, and the rest of the book is less exciting but setting that up. Whereas in the Stormlight Archive, I'm finding that the setup, the exciting bit at the end is not much longer than say for Mistborn in terms of page count, but the setup is much much longer, and I really struggle with that. I just didn't find it that interesting. The other thing I was a little bit mixed about is Dalinar. Obviously, the book kind of shows like each book shows the background of one character. For this one, it was Dalinar, and I think he's fleshed out quite well in some ways. Before these books, I'd have probably said Kaladin was a more interesting character. I do now think it's Dalinar overall. I'm not saying I like Dalinar more necessarily, but I do think he's a good, well thought out, well plotted character. I thought the reveals about him, and again, I suspect that a lot of people would disagree with me here, but I thought they were a bit obvious and not like they didn't wow me, they didn't shock me particularly. But we got to explore more of a good character, which is in itself worthwhile. But I think just kind of linking back to the kind of overriding message on this is it was too long, and I don't think we needed as much character exploration as we got. And I think you can tell that actually in a lot of like science fiction books that are much shorter. You feel like you really get to know characters as well. So the Book of Skulls, that was what 300 pages ish, maybe less. Told the story of 4 characters, and I feel like those characters are, almost as well fleshed out in a number of ways and I kind of understood those characters almost as well as Dan and R, even though Dan and R takes up probably 10 times the bandwidth to talk about. So all in all, I did like it. I'm not sure it was worth 55 hours of my time. That's the only thing, or 1,300 pages or however long. Obviously, I'm still going to be reading Stormlight, and I know I'm in the minority here. I just don't have the time to kind of. These books are obviously meant to be reread, but if you're rereading books that are like thousands of pages long, you're going to need an enormous time investment to really get the most out of these. And I just think you could maybe be a bit more efficient with your time and get more out of reading lots of other shorter books as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with it. Obviously, I'm going to keep reading Stormlight. Obviously, I think the magic system's brilliant. Obviously, I think the end was, like properly page turning and great. And maybe I'll get around to rereading these, but I'm just not sure I will. And therefore, I think I'm maybe not best placed to be reviewing these because, or, maybe take my opinion with the pinch of salt a little bit because I understand where my limitations are here. They're good books. I think they could be done in much less time. And I think that the good things about these don't need as much of a build up as there seems to be. I think there's a little bit of I don't know what the word is. He's maybe being a little bit indulgent. Is Brandon Sanderson with these?